Hello, today we have a 2002 PT Cruiser with a faulty ignition switch. I'm going to show you what that looks like. When you stick your key in to the ignition, you can turn it, and you might get power, you might not. If I turn it far enough, I get power. That's the run position. And if I turn it to the start position, there's nothing. Now normally, when you turn it to the start position, your key to the start position, all your lights and everything will go out, so all the power is diverted to the starter to start the engine. Well, when I turn it from run to start, it doesn't do that. So luckily, I still have power at the on position and at the, well, not the accessory position. So in order to get this car started, luckily I have a remote start installed. So what I'm going to do is, if I can get it back off, there we go. You kind of just have to mess with it a little bit because the positions to turn it off and on are not in the correct location. Is I'm going to remotely start the car with my little keychain thing here. So I'll start the car. Like that. And then normally, if you remotely start your car, you know, you're outside your car, you're inside your house, whatever. There's a safety feature with most remote starts, and that is if you push on the brake down there, it will turn off the car. That way, that nobody can steal your car while it's in the remote start mode. So once your car is started, you turn your key to your on position. Of course, because I've had power at on position, if I push on the brake, the car will remain running even if I push on the brake. So that's a nice little thing to know if you have a remote start and your ignition switch fails. But next I'm going to show you how to replace the ignition switch. I already got the replacement one here. And it is actually on this vehicle, it's down on this side right here. And I'll show you how to get down in there and take that out next. Alright, the first thing you're going to do when you replace your ignition switch is you're going to have to take off your steering column covers, which I already have. Mine broke in half horizontally. And the second thing you're going to have to do is take out these two screws right here, which I've already loosened up. Alright, and with those two screws out, you can then take your multi-switch on your steering column. You can just move that out of the way. I didn't disconnect it, but you can just move it out of the way. And the switch we're getting to is down right here. This is your ignition switch, and it's held in by a screw right here, so you're going to have to take that screw out. Alright, and once you get that screw out right here, you can just kind of wiggle it, pull it apart, and there it is. And then you're going to have to detach it. You can pop the red part, this red clip, up, and like that, and squeeze the little pin there. Oops. And it'll slide right off. Okay, now that we got the switch off, at a second glance, we can actually see that I believe this is called the ignition switch actuator. This part right here, because it goes inside the ignition switch and turns the actual switch, is broken off. So I believe that's the problem, not the actual ignition switch, and I'm going to test that right now. What most people think when they start their car is that the key itself starts the car, when in reality it's the switch. The key only allows the switch to be turned, and when the key is not in, it doesn't allow it to be turned. So when you put the key in, it pushes that little plastic piece out, and then you can rotate it. When actually, you can just stick a screwdriver, a small screwdriver, in the ignition switch here. If you can get it at the right angle. I don't know if I can. I think that one's too big. Okay, now I got it. stick it in there and turn it, there's on, and start. So we know it's not the ignition switch actually, it's actually the ignition switch actuator pin there, which broken off. And to turn your car back off, you just turn it the other way and turns it off, and then I can actually go backwards and turn it to the accessory, and the accessories are on. I'll turn it back off. There we go. So we know it's not the switch, but if you were to replace the switch, you would just go ahead and disconnect this and just buy the new part. Well, unfortunately, I already bought a new one of these, so I'm going to take that one back and get a new actuator. And to get the actuator out, I already pulled this off. Pull that connector off that goes right here. And then there are two screws there and there. Go ahead and take those out. Okay, I took these two screws out and pulled it off. And there's a little itty bitty little piece right here. Make sure you don't lose that when you pull this off. This piece here and this yellow part here connect to your shifter, and it prevents you from removing the key when it's in gear. So you can turn your car off, but you can't take the key out when your car's in gear. So the next part is we're going to take out this white piece. In order to do that, you have to take out the actual key cylinder itself. Okay, before we continue taking out the ignition actuator, I'm going to show you a little piece that I missed before when I started the car with the screwdriver. Because if you're thinking that you could just start any car with a screwdriver, it doesn't really work that way. You still have to have the key in the ignition in order for the anti-theft device to be disabled. This little plastic ring around here receives a signal from your key that goes to the car, because this has a little chip inside of it. And if that signal isn't there, or that signal doesn't match, the car will start and then immediately die, or the car won't start at all. That's the anti-theft feature in modern cars. So you can't just hotwire a car and take off with it, because you need the key with the chip in it to match the signal of the anti-theft device to keep the car running. So next I'll continue to show you how to take out we're taking out the key cylinder next. Okay, to take out the key cylinder, you stick the key in, you turn it to what would be the well, I guess about the position of the on position. So it really doesn't, it tells you where off and accessory is, but not really where start and on are. So just turn to about where on position is. Then you go under, and there is a little button, a little clip right here. I can get it in view. Right here. You just push that in. You can push it in with your finger or screwdriver. That little clip. Okay, and with that button push and your key in the on position, you can just pull the ignition, key cylinder right out. And that's all it is. That's all that holds the tumblers and everything for the key. And then this end, on this side, turns the actuator that turns the switch to start the car. So we can set that aside. Now, if we go back under the car now, or under the steering column, our actuator is right there, and that just simply falls out like that. And it will just fall out like that. Okay, I got the new one in. There was some parts that I had to take off because that's a universal one. So I just pretty much took off all the parts that the old one didn't have on it. So now we're just putting it back together. So I stuck it up in here. And when you put your key cylinder back in, make sure it's still in the on position, because this little pin that you pushed in on won't go in if it's not in the on position. So once we turn the on position, that's not on, it goes in. So it won't go in if it's not in the on position. And also, you're going to have to maneuver the ignition actuator to fit over this part here, because it only fits one way because the edges here are curved. So you're going to have to turn it and get it to fit and line up with the ignition actuator down inside there. Okay, now that I got the pin actuator and the ignition or the key cylinder together, I went ahead and put the pin back in this bottom part here and screwed it back on. And the next step is to put the ignition switch back on. And in order to do that, this switch is in the off position, so you want to make sure that your key is also in the off position. So if you turn it all the way towards you, that would be the accessory position, and then one click forward is off. Because if you don't put it in right, you'll break the new one, or you'll break off this plastic pin here, and we don't want to do that. This one here costs, the replacement actuator costs about $44, so I would rather not break this one too. Okay, now we got it back in. I actually found it was easier to turn the key cylinder to the accessory position and then turn the switch to the accessory position with a screwdriver and then align it that way. And then we put this top screw back in. Oops. The screw right here back in that was holding it on. And now we're going to test it to make sure it works before we put it all back together. So now with the key in, we're going to turn it to the accessory position. There we go. A little bit glitchy, but it's in the accessory position. Off position. That's the run position. And start. So there we go. Okay, and that first time I tried it, it was a little glitchy, but I turned it a few more times and it got smoother, and it turns really smooth now. So there's no problem there. So I went ahead and put it all back together, all the covers and everything, all the screws, and we are good to go. Thanks for watching.